Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
It's 7:06. We are flying through this Monday morning like Superman. I don't know. Coming up at 7:35, Jonathan Schanzer, Foundation for Defense of Democracies, about the Iran talks this weekend. 8:05, Link Lauren, political and cultural commentator. And then at 8:35, Kurt Schlichter on concerns over there at the Pentagon as we saw a CO get dismissed from her command because she was undermining the chain of command with the vice president. That's all coming up. It's Larry O'Connor with Julie Gunlock. And Julie, speaking of Superman, look who's here.
Our favorite.
He's faster than a speeding bullet, more powerful than a stack of legal briefs before an appellate judge. Up in the sky, it's a bird, it's a plane, it's Joe diGenova, legal analyst, former U.S. Attorney of the District of Columbia. There you go, Joe. How's that? Man of steel.
Not bad. I like that. You can keep going.
All right, so the House passed the No Rogue Rulings Act. Speaker Johnson said it will fix real abuse in the judicial system. Have you taken a look at this? Will it actually do what they suggest it might do, and will it pass the Senate?
Well, it'll certainly put a kibosh on what needs to be done to stop nationwide injunctions and limiting the rulings to a single district and the parties in front of the court, which is the goal. I think it has a fairly good chance of passing the Senate. There's an election year issue here for the Republicans if they play it correctly, and we'll see. You never know what's going to happen in the U.S. Senate, but so far the president is getting what he wants in a relatively timely fashion, and I think it's clearly a great signal to send the federal judiciary, especially when you have judges like this Judge Zinnes in Baltimore, who keeps insisting on hourly reports from the Justice Department on what they can do to get this person back from El Salvador. So we'll see. We'll see. I'm hopeful about the legislation.
Oh, can I just jump in there, Rafael, because you just said get him back. And I've been reading this. I've been investigating it. SCOTUS didn't specifically say get this guy back from El Salvador. They just said facilitate his release, right? Or is there some question as to whether El Salvador is one place he can't be deported to? Can they deport him to another country? What is that? Where does it stand?
Well, the situation, the Supreme Court did something really stupid. They issued a 9-0 decision, which doesn't really say anything. It doesn't order his return. It said, because it's in the area of foreign policy and national security, where they admit that they and the trial judge have limited say. Now, they didn't say how limited that say was, and they didn't say how open that say was. So we're left in this limbo, and the court is going to have to revisit this case again because John Roberts, in his desire to avoid conflict, is creating conflict. And it would be one thing if he had a judge in Baltimore who was reasonable, but the judge in Baltimore is not. The judge in Baltimore is, to put it bluntly, crazy. All you have to do is listen to the words on the record that are reported from that judge, and your skin starts to crawl. This is not the fine-tuned judicial thinking we like to think of happens in federal courts. This sounds like something out of a traffic court in New Jersey. So the bottom line is the court did not order the return. The court said that the government should make best efforts to facilitate and get him returned. That's all they said. They didn't order him to do that. Now, where does this end up? I don't know. Maybe he ends up in Gitmo.
Yeah.
Joe, in another deportation case, an immigration judge in Louisiana ruled Friday that Mahmoud Khalil, this is the Columbia student who sort of organized and led all these sort of anti-Jewish and
it
hasn't
been a student since December.
Yeah, you're right. Absolutely good call there. So he ruled that he can be deported. But again, Larry was talking about it this morning, and that's going to be appealed. How much more of this appeals process until he's actually deported? Like, what is sort of the legal requirements here before he's actually put on a plane to go home?
Well, this is Dickensian. This is like Bleak House.
Yes.
The bottom line is that if you remember the analyst case, the case that went on forever and ever,
Yep.
The issue here is he has had administrative due process. Now, what do I mean by that? The court says you're entitled to due process. That can either be administrative due process through a hearing inside DHS, which is what he got. He got a hearing from an administrative law judge, an immigration judge, not a federal judge. And that judge, that administrative judge, ruled that he is deportable because he violated the terms of his visa and a lot of other things. So he gets to appeal that. Under the rules of DHS, there's an administrative appeal inside to a 3-person panel. That brief has to be filed on April 23rd, no later than April 23rd. They can file it sooner if they want. They'll probably file it the last minute because they want him to stay here as long as he can because he's going to lose on appeal. And then he also has a case pending in New Jersey in a federal court, which is like a habeas case. I'm not quite sure what it is. And so that has to proceed. The Supreme Court has muddled this up once again by creating various avenues of due process for people who don't deserve it. He's not an American citizen. Why they are bending over backwards to create avenues for due process is beyond me. The court has really mucked up this area so awfully. Back when they said, back in the 40s, the president has control over foreign policy and national security, and courts have basically no power in this area. All of a sudden, courts have power in this area. How did that happen? It happened because of John Roberts, who can't seem to say no to any litigant. And once in a while they say no, but it's not enough for me. I've been reading all this stuff about the Trump wins and everything in the court. Yes, he's got some wins, and he's ahead of the game. But the Supreme Court has made this unnecessarily long process, and they're creating rights that shouldn't exist.
Joe, can I just say, and I want the executive branch to have robust authority when it comes to things like this. Am I missing something? Is there some concern that if, Barack Obama runs for a third term, or somebody like Obama, or someone where Obama is pulling the strings, that he can utilize these robust executive powers to inflict policies that I would not agree with? You know what I mean? I'm trying to be as impartial as possible.
Joe Biden did that. He opened up the border. You're absolutely right. And that's why elections matter. Joe Biden literally reversed 100 years of immigration law and said, I'm going to open the border. I'm going to let people in. And we are where we are now because Biden not only was incompetent and incapable, and other people were making decisions, but he changed the rules.
There you go. That's the answer I was looking for. Real fast, one other quick question, specifically on the deportation of Mahmoud Khalil. Do we get to choose where to send him? Because it's funny, he loves Gaza so much. I think that's where we should drop him, right? I mean, just let him right there in the middle of, so he can hang out with his Hamas friends. He doesn't like being, he hates America. Why does he want to stay so bad?
I think he's headed to Syria.
Is that where he's from? I thought he was Algerian.
I think he is, but he came from Syria. So he has connections to Syria. He also has connections. He is an Algerian, I think, by birth. But he could go to either place. My choice would be Syria.
Okay. Yeah, I guess it is a bit of a step above from Gaza because they have a few more buildings standing, but it's a dangerous place. Joe, always great to talk with you.
I don't think he can be shipped to Gaza because Gaza's not a state.
Oh, I guess that's true. Well, Bibi would take him. I'm sure Bibi would love to have him over. All right, Joe diGenova, great to talk with you.
You can put him on his defense team.
Yeah.
It's 7:15.
WMAL, making sense of the news. Live from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios. Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
On Friday, President Trump had his annual physical examination. He's the president, and so this becomes a very public thing and understandable, although our last president didn't reveal much publicly about his physical examinations. Now, did he? His private physician in the White House, who, if I remember right, wasn't even an MD, would release a perfunctory one-page paragraph saying, yeah, Biden's fine, everything's good, let's move on. The president released a much more detailed analysis of his physical examination on Friday with the results, saying that he is fully fit to serve as commander-in-chief. He's 20 pounds lighter since his checkup as president in 2020. He does actually look pretty fit, I have to say, compared to how he looked during COVID. We all put on a little bit during COVID, let's face it. You get those Uber Eats from Five Guys, and it just adds up. Needed that solace during the lockdown. To prove his fitness, of course, on Air Force One, heading down to Miami for the UFC fight, he went to the back of the plane and spoke to reporters and had this to say.
Anything you need to change up?
A little bit, but overall I think I felt I was in very good shape. Good heart, a good soul, very good soul. And I wanted to be a little different than Biden. I took a cognitive test.
Interesting.
He did. He took the cognitive test. He got every answer right. He says, by the way, I've got a good heart. I got a good soul. I missed that test on my last physical examination. Do they?
Self-assessment, Larry.
They measure the quality of your soul? My gosh. I guess it is Holy Week. We should all sort of be
That's right.
doing some sort of spiritual audit. But there you go. The president not only has a good heart, but also a good soul, according to his doctor. Just to prove matters, though, after the fight in Miami, back aboard Air Force One, flying back to Washington, D.C., the president, at 2 a.m,
yes,
went to the back of the plane and started talking to reporters like the Energizer Bunny.
People requested. I'm always available. I like Biden. Think Biden would do an interview at 2 in the morning? He would do one at 9 in the morning. I thought it was available.
I'm always available, unlike Biden. You think Biden would do an interview at 2 in the morning? He wouldn't do one at 9 in the morning, Trump says. So there you go. That's the thing. I mean, when you're the president, you're coming after Joe Biden. Like, every single measure of your performance is so damn low.
I know. And honestly, what he's doing when he does that, he's not really taking pot shots at Biden. He's taking pot shots at the media for never reporting it, for covering it up. He's constantly jabbing them. You know, you knew what Biden was. You knew that he was cognitively in decline, and you kept it quiet.
Trump passed his Montreal cognitive assessment test, which, by the way, that's not fair that they have to take a cognitive test in Quebecois. I mean, I can barely understand normal French, let alone that crazy Canadian version. Why did they do the Montreal assessment test? That's crazy. Anyway, it screens and assesses different brain functions. The test includes remembering a list of spoken words, listening to a list of random numbers, and repeating them backward.
I would fail.
Among other, oh my gosh!
Oh my God!
I failed just reading it.
Just reading that.
Me out.
I know.
Oh.
You know, the Democrats, though, like Jasmine Crockett, this weekend, I think it was this weekend or late last week, she was saying, it's just crazy that we don't think that he's losing his mind and that he's in cognitive decline. So I love that he took this test because, again, biggest loser, Democrats.
When Jasmine Crockett is the measure of such
I know.
Things, you know exactly how to take that. But yes, that's insane. Can you imagine if we had to take this? Remember a list of spoken words, listening to a list of random numbers, and then repeating them backwards. I kid you not.
I need you to talk slower because I don't even understand what you just said.
You and I have both had this same phenomenon. When we do this show, we are looking at the clock. We are looking at it with our eyes, and then, like right now, it's 7:22, and half the time I want to say, and it's 8:22. No, it's 9:22.
I know.
It's 5:22. It's like I'm literally looking at the number and I can't say it properly. Can you imagine having to take this test? That's the state of your president's health as of now. If there is a change, we will let you know because we're not Jake Tapper. It's 7:22.
Making sense of your world.
Talk radio is where I get all of my information.
News Talk 105.9 WMAL. Making sense of the news. Now on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
7:36 on this Monday morning. Thanks for joining us on O'Connor and Company as you wake up and start your day, start your week, and get rolling. At 8:05, Link Lauren, political and social commentator, will join us. And at 8:35, Kurt Schlichter, his latest column, The Pentagon Must Go on the Offensive to Defeat Politicized Officers. Kurt will join us coming up at 8:35. It's Larry O'Connor and Julie Gunlock. Good morning, Julie.
Good morning.
It is literally... I am shocked sometimes at how bad our mainstream media is, our legacy corporate media. But you would think that for the first time in years, the United States government, led by President Trump and Secretary of State Marco Rubio and their special envoy in the Middle East, the fact that the U.S. government sat across the table with representatives of the Iranian government would be a major story. It received nary a mention, shockingly. Yeah. We gave a preview of it on Friday, and now to give a wrap-up of what we believe happened at those discussions and what might happen next is Jonathan Schanzer, Executive Director of Foundation for Defense of Democracies. First, let's start there, Jonathan. I mean, am I wrong? Or that I didn't see much mention of this, and it seems to be a big deal, isn't it?
It's a huge story. This is almost a repeat or potentially a repeat of what went down between 2013 and 2015 when Barack Obama sat across the table or his envoy sat across the table from the Iranian regime. You got to remember, this is the world's foremost state sponsor of terror. They are the regime that is now responsible for a war that has rocked the Middle East for a year and a half. They're on the precipice of a nuclear weapon, which should shock everyone. And so, yeah, when you think about what's going on right now, this should be garnering huge headlines. And you're right, it's shocking to see how few people are covering it.
Yeah. Special Envoy Stephen Witkoff is the one who sat with the Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi. This was in Oman. Considered to be, I guess, neutral territory. The administration says that it was very positive and constructive, and they have now scheduled a second meeting for next weekend. What do you know about this, Jonathan? What's going on here?
Well, we don't know a lot. This has been, I think the officials here have been pretty tight-lipped. We know that there's been a little bit of direct engagement between the Iranian officials and the U.S. officials out there in Oman. The Omanis do claim to be neutral, although I think we need to put it out there right now that they are the host of the Houthi headquarters in the Middle East. So while the U.S. is bombing the Houthis in Yemen right now, the headquarters is not far from where these people are meeting. You get a sense, by the way, that there are not a lot of great actors out there in the Middle East. And that may be why we're going to see the next talks be held in Italy, according to reports this morning.
Okay.
Yeah. Jonathan, what brought them to the table? What convinced them? I think that the United States has been willing to come to the table and willing to talk for years and years, but really, what is it that finally convinced them to sit down?
This is, honestly, I love this question, and no one's asking it. There are two carrier strike groups right now off the coast of Iran. The United States has massive firepower in the region. We just brought a B-2 bomber to the island of Diego Garcia, and that is what would be needed in order to destroy Iran's nuclear program. We've sent two missile batteries to the Israelis to be able to shoot down missiles if Iran decided that in response to an American strike they wanted to try to hit Israel. So we're messaging right now to the Iranians, this is it, folks. You've dragged this on for a very long time. We're not going to allow you to drag it along any further. And I think it's just amazing when you think about it, how countries will respond when they know that their own livelihood is at stake.
Yeah.
So they're vulnerable. They're desperate. They need something. Why are we throwing them a lifeline? Why don't we just let them dangle on the rope here?
Well, that's, I think, the real criticism. If there's a criticism to deliver right now to the Trump administration, it would be that, this is the moment where you don't negotiate. You say, look, we've got all this firepower in the region. You have an illegitimate, illegal nuclear program. It's time for you to just simply shut it down. You have a week. You have 2 weeks, whatever the deadline would be. That is, I think, one way that we could have approached this. But I think what the Trump administration appears to be trying to do is to get to something that's more sustainable and perhaps a little bit more manageable for the Iranians. What we don't want them doing is making a quick dash for the bomb, spurring a major crisis in the Middle East, possibly launching a war. I think Trump is basically saying right now, we're going to give peace a chance, but if you listen to what the president says, he's also saying that his patience is running out, and it'll be very interesting to see how this plays out over the next week or two, because I don't see this lasting much longer than that.
You tweeted an interesting comment here. There was some sort of question of who was going to lead these negotiations, Witkoff and Rubio. Rubio is not there, and you tweeted Rubio should be there. Why is it either or in terms of why can't both of them go there? Can you give us a little sense of what's going on there?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think we need to understand that Stephen Witkoff is probably a little bit out of his depth here. This is a real estate guy who does not have a lot of experience with the nuclear file. He may be a very talented negotiator, but when you start stepping into the idea of, talking about centrifuges and, sunsets, this is highly technical stuff here. And here you have Marco Rubio, Secretary of State. He has been dealing with foreign affairs in the Senate for years, right? I mean, I don't think there's anybody who does it better. This is the man who should be there. Now, I don't mind if Witkoff is there, but Rubio needs to be there too. He's going to be able to add that technical expertise, and he's going to know the history of what the Iranians have done when they rope-a-doped the Obama administration and the Biden administration in the past. He's been one of these key critics. So I would love to see him there. My understanding is that the Iranians didn't want him there, and the Biden administration agreed, which to me does not inspire confidence. That's really the one major criticism that I would deliver right now. Get Rubio in that room.
The fact that you just slipped and said the Biden administration instead of Trump is actually, I think, a tell that was not a great move. Jonathan Schanzer, Executive Director of Foundation for Defense of Democracies. I got to follow up on one thing you just said there. The Trump administration, they're a little impatient. They want something to materialize in the next week or two, I think is what you just said. What's the or else here? Because we have a hell of a lot of military assets right now in that region. Could there potentially, if we don't reach some agreement here, could there be a military strike in the offing, or at least the threat of a military strike that's actually compelling this?
Yes. I mean, I think the answer is yes. You have to understand that back in October, the Israelis, after getting hit with 200 ballistic missiles fired by the Iranians, they went into Iran and they destroyed every single one of their strategic air defenses. Every Russian-made S-300 is now destroyed. The skies over Iran right now are naked. And so if it's not the Trump administration that orders the strike, it could be Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel. My sense, though, is that, this is a window that's going to close. I don't know exactly when. People are saying August, September, October, whatever the number is. We got about 4 or 5 months here to take advantage of this weakness on the part of the Iranian regime. And that is the other compelling factor here for the Iranians. They know that they don't have a lot of cards to play militarily. So that's why I think Trump is pushing for a quick resolution. And I do think that the or else could be strikes on those nuclear facilities.
Meanwhile, oil is at a 4-time low. That hurts Iran. Also, Russia, that oil prices affect Russia, but also Russia is engaged with Ukraine. They don't have time to throw a lifeline to Iran, nor are they inclined to at this moment. This is quite possibly a historic moment and opportunity here, Jonathan. Maybe they can make something of it. Thanks for joining us. We'll keep in touch with you guys. Oh, go ahead.
Absolutely. Oh, I was just going to say, absolutely. This is, the Russians will not get involved. The Chinese will not get involved. They might engage a little bit of bluster here, but I think Trump knows enough to know that that's a bluff and that Iran is essentially right now standing alone.
Yep, they're on their own, and they're not getting billions from the U.S. government at this moment, the way Biden and Obama did. Thank you. FDD, Foundation for Defense of Democracies. It's 7:45 WMAL traffic.
WMAL's Vince Colonnese, weekdays at noon on 105.9 WMAL, making sense of the news.
Over the weekend, there was a horrific attempted assassination of the governor of Pennsylvania, Governor Shapiro. Here he is speaking about this arson attack on the governor's residence while he and his family were sleeping at 2 a.m.
We do know that this attack was targeted. We don't know the person's specific motive yet, but we do know a few truths. First, this type of violence is not okay. This kind of violence is becoming far too common in our society.
Yeah, in fact, it has all the earmarks of the violence that we've seen against Tesla owners, Tesla dealerships, against the Trump inauguration in 2016, if you remember, and the violence that we saw during the Black Lives Matters riots of 2020. It's Antifa kind of stuff. In fact, the guy who has been arrested, 38-year-old Cody Balmer, has a very large social media footprint where he basically dresses like these Antifa anarchists. He's got F Trump all over his social media platform. He doesn't like the Democrats either. He's an anarchist. He doesn't like any law and order at all in this country. And in this case, he has turned his violence against Josh Shapiro.
Yes, and what you just laid out there, the fact that he is obviously a radical leftist anarchist, is why you will not hear about this guy. The mainstream media, if this guy had been a conservative, this guy, we would already have his bio. We would already be interviewing his mother. He would already, be splashed all over everything. This is going to be memory hold. The media will not cover this.
They'll cover it a little bit today, Julie, I'll correct you, only in the sense that they will equivocate and have this all political violence of all stripes must be condemned.
Yes.
This is that we are beyond this. This isn't okay. This is what has happened to our society. And there's no equivocation here. It's almost entirely coming from the left.
I have thoughts and prayers, total sadness for the Shapiro family. Terrifying situation. But, the left too often ignores the violence in their party with their allies. They totally ignore it, especially when it's directed towards Republicans.